Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to session 2 of Managing Shocks and Disruptions to the Green Industry, COVID-19 and beyond. I know a lot has changed very rapidly over the last year, and there was a book by John Stanley, I believe it is, and he talked about every so often major events come along that really turn things upside down, and I think this one may qualify. But he talks about making adjustments while you have the resources and the means to do so. Today we have an excellent lineup of speakers. We're going to start out with Dr. Julie Campbell, and she's a research scientist with UGA, and she's going to share some information that she has gathered. We also will hear from Steve Newton with the Georgia Small Business Development Center here at UGA. And then pleased to have Teddy Russell with us. He's the CEO of Russell Landscapes. So these are terrific speakers, and they're going to share with us some of their experiences this year and give us some insights as to how did they adjust and adapt to these changes. Following that, around 9:05, we're going to have a discussion panel. And again, we have a terrific lineup of participants in our discussion panel today. We've got Carrie Shea, owner of Victory Gardens in Savannah. We've got Steve Faber, the operations manager for Rupert Landscape. We have Pam Dooley. We have Mary Kay Woodworth and TJ Imberger. So what a great group. And I'll introduce those individually as we get to that portion of our presentation. But without further ado, Julie, if you are all set to go, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Okay, so today I'm going to talk about an overview of COVID, the impact and the changing reality. So the green industry is a unique one, I'll say. There's really not a lot of data on the green industry. We don't take, or I guess we don't take as much data as other industries. So say if you were in the cattle industry, there is data for everything from the number of cows to the pounds of meat sold. There's data for years, but for the green industry, we tend not to take as much data. And so there's not as much information available. There are things like the ag census, the census of horticulture, the floriculture and nursery crop yearbook. It stopped in 2007, but a lot of these things are taken every 5 years, or you have to actually subscribe to, you have to pay for. So we don't tend to have a lot of data that's readily available for us in this industry. Given that 2020 was it was a really great year for the green industry, but it also depends on your sector, the sector that you were in. We'll see some more data that I have that kind of tells like by sector. Certain people, it was a booming year. It was great. It was wonderful. For others, not so much. They're also moving forward in 2021. There could be some major issues because of this. Consumers have changing expectations. There were things that we did differently because of COVID. People were different, that they were changing consumer behaviors. More people work from home. There were things that were different in 2020, obviously, that may not be the same going forward. So because of that, there will be changing things that could happen. Also, supply side issues. We had labor, we had a lot of supplies. Like anecdotally, I've heard that some of the plants that were actually destined for later markets were sold because there was a shortage. So people sold things that would normally be sold in the next year. They sold this year. So maybe this year we're not going to have enough supply for certain things. So this is a survey that we did for the Southeast. We had 650 consumers that we surveyed, and we asked, did you do any of the following because you spent more time at home during the coronavirus pandemic? So 44% said, yes, I planted a garden. 13% said they put in new turf. People did outdoor renovations or other landscape activities. And only 40% of people said there was no change between the pre-pandemic and pandemic. So this was actually a big boom for the green industry in that they had more time at home, they were doing more stuff, so they actually bought more. It was kind of like, I can't go and do the things that I normally do. I'm stuck at home, so I'm going to improve my home area. And so it was a big boom for the industry. This obviously was different in different places depending on the lockdown, and I'll show some more data later on about this. Will this happen in 2021? We don't know. We have no idea if it'll be the same. Obviously, there's going to be some differences in some things, but we did ask in a larger survey across the U.S., do you plan to plant a garden in 2021? And it was a similar number, 35% said no, they don't. And then 42%, yes, they always plant. 11% were worried about food shortages. During the pandemic, things were sometimes hard to find. So people got a little nervous and they were, I don't know that I'm going to have certain things. I want to be able to have them. And so more people decided they would plant a garden. I've heard that some of the seeds sold out online in record time. So people are a little nervous about the food supply currently. And then some people were like, if I can work from home, sure, I'll do it. I will plant a garden. So this is promising for 2021. Nothing's ever guaranteed. Some data that we saw. So we did a survey of, like I said, 650 consumers over the Southeast, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. And what we saw different things in different states. So for Georgia, we did see for home gardens, this is plants. This was purchases from January to July. So the first half of 2020 and then in 2019. And so we saw an increase of about $11 million dollars in Georgia, and over the Southeast, we projected $132 million. But this was just for the first half of the year. But in some states, there was a decrease. In Tennessee, there was a decrease of $63 million, and some of these things could be due to lockdown regulations. In Georgia, we were lucky that we only had a couple of weeks of hard lockdown, whereas other states had a longer time period. They had, and some of those regulations were put in right during the time where it was the prime buying time. So they weren't able to get to certain things. People were locked down. And so there was you just weren't able to go to a store and purchase things that you normally would purchase in the spring. Some places we heard estimates of upwards of 25 to 40% increase in sales. That was really good for plant purchases. However, we did see in Georgia, we also asked the same question about hard goods like pots, fertilizers, mulch, anything other than actual plants. Georgia had a decrease in sales for the first half of 2020 for this. So a loss of roughly $55 million. However, the Southeast as a whole, this was increased. There was an increase in sales. This could be due to the fact that there was a supply issue in some cases. Then also the lockdown came right at the time when things you weren't available to go into certain places and get things that you normally would. So some of the stores that you would normally buy these things from were shut down, or it wasn't like an impulse buy. And then also the fact that a lot of people were doing curbside pickup. They changed their habits. They changed what they do. So normally when you go into a store, you browse around, you get this, you get that. I know when I go to Lowe's or Home Depot or any store like that, I go in for one thing, I come out with a lot of other things. So perhaps that's what happened here. But overall for the Southeast, the numbers were pretty good considering. So we also looked at a total combined. The Georgia numbers, we had a net loss of $43,000 for the first half, but the Southeast, like I said, the Southeast overall looked really good, $306,000. And the U.S. was upward of 1.5 billion. Some anecdotally stuff too as well. Like initially, cut flowers were seen to be like absolutely devastated. They thought that this was just going to be 2020 was going to be a horrible year for cut flowers. But I talked to someone in the industry a couple of days ago. They're out of Miami, and they said that it turned out to be one of the best years for cut flowers for them because of the fact that people were home. And so people were buying bouquets at supermarkets that they wouldn't normally buy because they're trapped in their house and not seeing anyone. So you want to make your house a little nicer, spruce it up. So it's very mixed. So 2020 was very mixed in that some people it was a boom for, some people it was a bust for. So depending on where you were and what you were doing. So we did a larger survey this year, in the beginning of the year, of 4,000 U.S. consumers. So this was all over the U.S. And so we asked, how much more are you going to spend and did you spend in 2020 compared to 2019 on plants? On average, it was 18%. They increased their spending by 18%. Then we asked how much more in 2020 compared to 2019 on non-plants. people also said around 19% they increased. And so this was just an estimate of what they said during the pandemic, how much they increased their spending. So people did say that they increased their spending on plants and hard goods during this time. So I know this is busy, but I just want you to notice kind of the trends here. So we asked these same 4,000 consumers, like, how satisfied were you with the measures taken at the following locations to lessen the potential to transmit coronavirus? So how satisfied were you with, how these different locations, how they handled the cleanliness, trying to mitigate the fact that you might possibly get coronavirus from their facility? And most people overall were happy. So even from the mass merchandiser all the way down to the independent garden centers, it was pretty similar across the board. So that's promising that the big guys and the little guys, people were trusting across the board. They had the same trust for them, the fact that they thought that they would keep them safe. So we also did a survey where we looked at different shopping habits of people and how it changed over the pandemic. So different states had different regulations, like I said. And so there were different types of shopping habits that we saw. In Georgia, we were flat across the board. A lot of things didn't change. This could be due to the fact that we had pretty lax restrictions on things, thankfully. We were shut down compared to the US as a whole. California is still shut down. But like Georgia as a whole, we were pretty level, and a lot of things were overall similar as pre-pandemic. So we asked people also, like, purchasing habits after the pandemic. So what do you intend to do after the pandemic? For Georgia, about 58% of people said that they would go back to buying things in a similar way after the pandemic. And then 20% said they would do it similar to during the pandemic. So that possibly could be like buying more online kind of thing. And then 22% said there's a combination before and during the pandemic. There is a set of consumers that like the changes that have happened and what is going on. So like the curbside pickup kind of thing. But I would encourage you not to necessarily go full on into that if you were going to do it, because there are a fair number of your consumers too they just want to go back to the way it was. They want to go back pre-pandemic. They want to be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I can go into a grocery store now and I can pick up groceries like a normal person, as opposed to the curbside pickup. But there are a fair number that enjoy that and think that maybe they'll do that more often. Like I said, lessons to be learned from this, depending on your sector. So that's what you have to do. You have to decide who are your customers, what are those customers wanting. So depending on your sector, it was a really great year. And for some people, 2020 was a disaster. But hopefully the great year, people outweigh the disaster years. And I would, advise you not to jump into something that worked during COVID, because like wholeheartedly don't put, all your eggs in one basket kind of thing. Don't completely go to a way that worked during COVID, because it may not work after the pandemic is settled down and going over. You need to gauge the fact that what your customers like. So I was talking to a floral retailer, and they were saying like they started doing shipping. They didn't do shipping previously, but they've gotten into it. They are going to continue doing it on a smaller scale after the pandemic so that they can increase their revenue. They're not going to just fold up shop and say, all right, now we're only doing shipping, so that's what we're going to do from now on. They're going to go back and, reevaluate and see how it does for them. All right, so now I'm going to switch gears over into agritourism and parks. And so John Salazar, he is in the Department of Agricultural Economics at the University of Georgia. He actually did an ag forecast that has a lot more information than I have here. And so there's a link to it here. And so he can tell you a lot more about stuff like this. I'm just going to do a glossy overview. But in 2019, Georgia hosted over $32 billion in visitors to Georgia, and they have over almost 300,000 jobs. So agritourism and parks, that's a big part of Georgia's economy too, and part of the green industry. And so there was a survey done, and 28% of hotels in urban areas, they had an occupancy decrease of over 28% during the pandemic. And in rural areas, almost 17% decrease. So there was a huge hit to the green industry during this. And then food services, obviously, a lot of places you still can't go into a lot of places dining at full capacity. So they already operate on a margin that's really small. So they've had a big hit here. But we ask a couple of questions too, like how safe do you feel going out of the community, going out into your community? In the first wave, which was done in early on in the pandemic, there were 43% of people that said they don't feel safe going out. And then the second wave, we surveyed people more recently in 2021, and 59% say they feel safe going out in the community. So more people are actually feeling safer going out in the community and traveling outside of the community. There's an increase of that. And so people are becoming more and more comfortable with this as the pandemic goes on. People are becoming more and more comfortable and actually feeling a little safer, which is a good sign, which means that more people probably will be participating in activities, going to parks and things like that. Similar question about travel. So there was a decrease that COVID affects their travel. The economy, people are still nervous about the economy. Transportation costs will wash as well, but more people actually want to get out and want to get moving around and traveling again and going from place to place. And this just want to show you the trend that more people are traveling, are wanting to travel and get out of Georgia and go to other places. And that's a promising sign here. Just to see about park usage. A lot of people didn't go to parks they decreased their park usage during this time of the pandemic. They stayed home. And some people, like there were actually people that actually increased their usage. So depending on how you felt about the pandemic, what you were doing, you had increase and decrease in park uses. There were different reasons for increasing and decreasing park uses. Some people the parks weren't in use. So in different states, obviously there weren't parks uses. I know in Athens, like some of the playgrounds and areas, parks were closed. Whereas where I live, out in Watkinsville, things were they opened quicker. So a lot more people use those parks because you're trapped at home, your kids. And so you needed somewhere to do. Just overall trend, park usage. There we go. So I guess in closing, the new reality, COVID, it impacted people differently. So in the green industry, you have to just understand your customer. You have to know what they are. So some sectors, people were all in. They loved the new they loved the changing things that made the regulations happen. Like as far as you now have curbside pickup. You now have different options like buying online, ordering online, doing those things. Some people were all in about that, and some people do not like it at all, and they want to go back to the way it was previously. So there are different segments, and you need to know what segment you're in and what you want to do moving forward, depending on who your actual consumer is. For parks, many people, just like the green industry, many people want to return to normalcy. But there's also that segment that is still really concerned about public areas and public safety. Being able to cater to both and to get people back into parks is a big part of getting people back to, I guess, what we call normalcy again. Overall, I think that we're probably moving towards the 2019 numbers, but I don't know that we will get to those levels for the entire industry. Like I said before, some people will be much higher and some people will be lower, and unfortunately there will be winners and losers, just like in anything, the pandemic. You just have to decide what works for you and what you can capitalize on, and then what doesn't, and try to minimize that.
Thank you, Julie. We appreciate you sharing that, and really some good topics in there we can revisit with the discussion panel as far as what are we seeing on the ground. Mary Kay, you get a lot of credit for organizing the charge to have this industry designated as an essential workforce. So we're thankful for that and the work of all of you who took part in that. Thank you, Julie. All right. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Steve Newton. He is with the Georgia Small Business Development Center. And really, we can thank the Georgia Small Business Development Center for making this happen. They had some funding available through the CARES Act, and we put together a team to figure out how we can increase resiliency in the green industry through the pandemic. We're thankful for Steve and the work of his colleagues in making this happen. I also want to take a moment just to thank the Georgia Recreation and Parks Association. This was going to be a part of their program, the Maintenance Management School, which due to COVID-19 was postponed because it was a face-to-face event. We're thankful for Steve and also Mary Kay Woodworth with the Georgia Urban Ag Council. So we're thankful for her help to promote and spread the word about this. She will be on our discussion panel. Steve, I've been good friends with Steve for a while, and he shared with us a segment on some of the resources that are available as a result of COVID-19, some of the tax information and some of the relief funds that became available over the last year. Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it. Good to be back. Was it last week or last month when we did this? See, time flies. It's Blur's Day. Every day's Blur's Day, it seems like. It was actually, I know time has stood still in a strange way with all the stay at home where everybody's working from home. But I just really want to appreciate you guys organizing this. We're happy and delighted to be a part of it. It's Landscape Industry, Urban Ag Council do such a super job representing the industry, and we just appreciate what Mary Kay in particular has done to make this organization or make our industry recognize the needs of the industry throughout the state. So we appreciate that, and like you say, we're grateful for her participation in that process. Here at SBDC, what we do, we're part of the University of Georgia and Public Service and Outreach Unit, as is the Cooperative Extension Service and other groups. And what we try to do is provide assistance and resources to small business owners of every variety in the state of Georgia. We have 17 offices around the state and 50 different business consultants like myself around the state. Everybody has a little bit of, obviously, a different background, different expertise. Mine happens to be mostly in finance, accounting, and economics. And consequently, I'm going to probably bore you with some economic data as well. So I apologize for that in advance, but hopefully from that, we can chart a course going forward to see what trends in the past have affected this industry, what trends do we see going forward, and what resources are on the ground right now to help you as a small business owner. Part of what we wanted to talk about in this series is resiliency. And fortunately, in the landscape urban ag industry, we haven't suffered as much. Some folks have actually prospered during this process, during this crisis, and it's very uneven across all economic sectors. And we recognize that here in the landscape industry, of course. And we want to make sure that, as Julie alluded to, we want to make sure that as we plan our future marketing efforts, as we get ready for our spring marketing pushes, that we're doing the things that customers want us to do. And resiliency doesn't mean just hunkering down, to use a UGA term, until the crisis passes. It means recognizing the challenges and the opportunities that are presented as a result of this crisis. And like I say, a lot of folks have suffered, and the restaurant, hotel, hospitality industry has really taken it on the chin throughout this process, and they're still trying to recover from it. And there's a lot of good programs out there to help them, but with changes, with challenges, also come opportunities to help those customers. And a big part of that has just being concerned about how customers and clients and employees respond to the COVID crisis and are sensitive to it, and make sure that our customers and clients are aware of what we're doing. A great example of that, of course, is how Walmart is a great example of how they responded to the crisis. Obviously, they were considered an essential service for much of their product line, and it used to be that they would clean only after hours. They would, after all the customers and other employees were gone, they would come in and clean. But now they do it all the time, and we can adapt some of those same ideas in our service with our customers, just keeping them aware, making them aware of what we do as business owners and employees to make sure our customers are safe, and our customers want to see that the employees are safe. So there's a mutual respect for that. And And as we recognize those opportunities, that means resilience and responding to the situation. But another part of that too is I'm going to switch over this side, is something that Jeff Bezos said, and this also Julie said in a different, slightly different way. This is what Jeff Bezos said about recognizing trends. And Jeff Bezos, of course, Amazon, one of the richest men in the world. And what somebody asked him, what trends does he look for in future economic ideas when he's going into new markets? He says he really looks at is the constants. What's going to be there over time? What can I focus on? And he knows that, and he recognizes and built obviously one of the biggest businesses in the world around this idea that customers always want good customer service. Customers always want good customer service and good value. And that's not going to change. So that's something we can always build a business around, making sure that we understand that what our customers want is on a regular basis. And if we can do that, then we're probably going to be successful as long as we execute on the other parts of the business as well. With that in mind, we think about some of the things that we want to do that we have to adapt to in the short run, but also keep an eye on the long run and what customers are always constantly wanting. Now, the revenue downturn across the economy has been different for different sectors. We know that's true. We've seen that green industry has fared relatively well, but long term, this is an important thing to remember that going back, Department of Labor Statistics, everything the U.S. government has collected on economic data since the turn of the 20th century, from the 19th century back to the early 1900s, everything indicates that we've had some major economic shocks over that period of time. Obviously, going back to things like the Spanish flu and World War I and the Depression and World War II, we always return to a level GDP growth of 4 to 5%, no matter what happens. This is a big shock, but it's not any bigger than some of the other shocks that we've had. What's more important in that, recognizing those trends, is certain segments within the economy have changed over time. And if you're in one of those segments with long-term decline, then you have to recognize that your customer share, your percent of the economy is shrinking, not growing. Other parts of the economy are growing. Home values, homes have grown dramatically. Healthcare has grown dramatically. Other parts of our percent of our income that we spend on things like food and cars have actually gone down quite a bit. So understanding what we're spending money on is the long-term customer trends are probably more important, or they're definitely more important than the short-term impacts that we have to survive the short-term impacts as well. As I said, look for things that are constant with Jeff Bezos. And so I really wanted to focus a little bit on the customer service component as a general concept for what we're dealing with at the present time, something we're trying to work with as far as building that long-term success for our business or the service that we provide. Whether you're in the private sector or public sector, customer service is always important. Here at the SBDC, we've developed a course called Maximum Service that I'm drawing a few slides from for this presentation. It's just a sort of a teaser for some of the things that are in there. And it talks about some of the long-term trends in customer service that are important to any small business owner. It's going to help you succeed in your business no matter what the current economic conditions are, whether it's a tight economic market or an expanding market or whatever the case is. Good customer service is at the core, particularly in our industry. We are a service industry to a large extent, and we have to cultivate our customer service to be successful. And communicating what our COVID-19 strategy is as a part of that customer service. And so we need to think about it in terms that customer service is intentional. What we do with our employees, how we train them to be customer service oriented is intentional. And if you don't give it thought, if you don't define what your customer service is, then your customers will define it for you, or your employees will define it for you. We think about that in terms of everything as far as a business owner is concerned, that you need to set the story for your business that day. You need to define what the headline is every day. You need to lead your business and your employees and your customers to help them understand what your mission is, what you're trying to accomplish. And you have to do that every day. If you don't, they will. People will fill that void for you, and you have to communicate the successes, communicate the ideas that are important to you and what you're trying to do as a critical mission. And I'm going to just pull up a few of the slides in this short, it's a 5-week program, and I'm going to pull a few slides out of here that we can talk about that helps you drive your business. And if you're interested in learning more about the program, obviously we have that available to you too. But the other thing we forget about as far as customer service is concerned, and really important to revisit during this time of crisis, is understanding that customer service is actually a revenue positive component of our business. It can actually generate good revenue. I'm going to show you some slides that support that as well in just a second. But as we know, it costs much more to attract new customers than it does to keep an existing customer. And so a lot of our time is spent attracting new customers. We need to spend a significant amount of our time just keeping good customers and understanding why they're coming to us or why they're leaving us, and maintaining good communication with them. In this course that we present on good customer service applicable across the board, we define customer service. We talk about what good customer service is from your perspective, what is customer-centered environment, and trying to build that culture in your industry of what good customer service is. And I'm not going to go in through all the details here, but what we think about in terms of economic crisis or COVID crisis or whatever dilemma we're in at the moment. I'm old enough to remember a lot of crises that we've faced, but we always have to go back to those constants that customers are looking for and feel comfortable with during those crises. And that really focuses around customer service. One of the things that keep us alive as a business is being sensitive and responsive to our customers. We can, like I say, I remember from the 2009 financial crisis, when we went through that, the green industry really took it on the chin then. We were one of the industries hardest hit and longest hit in that process, but we did recover. And during this crisis, as well as that one, when we are faced with uncertainty, customers go back to those things that are familiar to them. And we saw that reenacted in this time of crisis again with the big brand names were the industries that are the brand names like Home Depot and Lowe's and Walmart. People felt a comfort level at knowing these folks were there to help them. And they were very successful at that and capitalize on it. Whatever size business we're in, we need to help customers feel comfortable with it. And that's that we accomplish that through customer service. And we've all experienced terrible customer service, and it drives a lot of our decisions about who we work with. And some of these great cartoons, the bad news is our customers hate us. The good news is we have a lot less customers. And here's something that's fascinating about customer service to me. It's always interesting to see why businesses fail and why businesses succeed, but why customers leave. 1% die, 3% move away, but skipping down to the bottom, 68% leave our business because of rude or discourteous service. And we've all voted with our feet in various times with customer service over the years. We want to keep that in mind. And as far as our industry is concerned, I think sometimes we don't define what good customer service is for ourselves and for our customers and for our employees in particular. Like I say, I'm just skipping through a couple of the slides here that we go into a lot more detail in some of these training courses that are offered and through the Public Service Outreach Unit at the University of Georgia and SBDC. There's a lot of opportunities for additional education out there. So a couple of things that we want to do and write and enforce the policies as a business owner, as a leader in your business. You want to make sure that you understand what customer service is. You want to understand that sometimes you have to define some simple things. And in a normal setting, we would sit in a room and we'd talk about all the things that you can do to enhance communication to your employees and communications to your customers to help them feel more confident about what you're doing in customer service. We have a tremendous amount of technology now that lets us communicate with both employees and customers. And that little bit of communication goes a long way. Just in the preparation for this meeting, getting notices in advance, knowing where the links are. Think about employing some of those things for your standard customers, as simple as taking a picture of work completed letting them know that it's completed, identifying things that are maybe need to be addressed in the landscape environment that are going to help them enjoy their landscape a little bit more. And these are essentially no cost automatic processes that you can put in place in helping cultivate that climate and that culture of service will be a revenue generator for you as an industry. Using examples of celebrating customer successes of folks that have enjoyed their landscape more. They benefit from, particularly during this time of economic uncertainty and personal challenges, sometimes enjoying our landscape more is something that we all benefit from and can help bring a little bit more calm and security to our overall environment. So we also want to develop a customer service strategy. And that goes back to defining customer service is not an accident. It happens intentionally. And bad service also, if we don't plan for it, will happen because we don't have a process in place to make this happen as we do. Customer service is a lot like tending our landscape. We recognize things that need attention. We need pruning, we need fertilizer, we need herbicide and insecticide application. So same with customer service. There are certain things that we can do just like we do to make our grass green and the weeds gone. There's things that we can do to keep our customer service ongoing and an ongoing part of our business, and making sure that we incorporate all the current ongoing concerns of our customer needs. The other strategy benefits and things that help you gain control over your business as a result of incorporating a good customer service program includes things like some of the benefits include minimizing both customer and employee stress. When customers know what they expect or what you're going to provide in very detailed, clear explanation of that, and you sometimes provide a little bit more. I always try to build in a little bit more extra into what we provide in our business, from our business to our customers. It reduces their stress. They know what to expect. If they need more, then you can certainly provide a little bit more, and you define that as long as they understand what your customer service expectations are. It also reduces employee stress. And when your employees are clearly aware of what you are going to accomplish, what their expectations are, then you have a lot less turnover. You have folks not leaving the industry. You have a much more pleasant work environment. A whole nother question that we always address is why do employees leave? And usually it's not about salary. It's about the work environment they're in. Their boss is not communicating to them. They don't respect their boss, or generally the people they report to that they have problems with for whatever reason. And this is a great way to reduce that stress level and gain respect for both employees and employers. So it minimizes turnover. So it has a multitude of benefits. It certainly improves employee productivity when folks are clearly understanding what good customer service is, because after all, that is our objective. We want to provide the service that our customer expects in alignment with what our ability to deliver those services are. Once we have that written and clear and understand, that minimizes stress, keeps employee turnover a lot lower. We want to create a proactive work environment too. It lets us prevent those callbacks. And how terrible is that? Then that we get how expensive is that? We know what we're going to go do. We identify problems before they happen. We recognize an area in the landscape that is problematic, and we're proactive to respond to those issues as before the customer is. And they appreciate that. We appreciate that, and our employees appreciate that. Build that into your daily schedule. It's very simple to do. Lots of programs can be automated. It doesn't take a lot of extra time. And like I mentioned several times, it improves customer retention. And if you keep folks happy with what you're doing, then they're going to stay with you a lot longer. And of course, in our industry, particularly for the smaller companies that are service oriented, I see this over and over again as a general rule for successful small business owners. And I'm talking about people with less than 10 employees, maybe 5 employees. But if you're getting about 50% of your new customers through word of mouth, then you're in a sweet spot. That means that you're treating your customers so well that they're willing to refer you to their friends and family. And that's huge. That's huge. That means money you don't have to spend on advertising. You're getting that word of mouth recommendation. And that's so important to particularly to small business owners who may not necessarily have some of the marketing budget that some of the bigger companies have to get the word out about customer acquisition. Good customer service reinforced through word of mouth is an absolutely critical part of our success story here. Just a couple of other quick things to pop on. Good customer service means providing quality products and services. You define what these are for your particular company. Again, here at SBDC, what we do most of our time is work one-on-one with individual company owners. 90% of our time is spent in that capacity. So we would take these ideas and run through them individually and tailor them to your specific process. And also, as other folks in the public service and outreach unit do, we provide a lot of education and training to reinforce those concepts. Anyway, I just wanted to give you a teaser on what good customer service programming is out there, how it relates to your industry, how it relates to the specific environment we're in right now, and how you tailor your company to meet those needs. And let you know that we are available to all small business owners at no cost through the University of Georgia Public Service and Outreach Unit. So, Greg, we appreciate the opportunity to be here and participate in this program. Again, in 20 minutes, I know there's a lot more material to cover, but I just wanted to introduce the topic and hopefully look forward to working with you.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Good information and good resources available through the Small Business Development Center. I hope you all out in the attendees here will take advantage of that and talk with Steve more. And as he said, there's so much more he can provide than a 20-minute session. So thank you for the information, Steve. Appreciate what you all do. I'm going to introduce our next speaker, and we'll take any questions if we have time at the end. I don't see anything directly in the chat box here for you, Steve. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. I am very pleased and especially just humbled by the fact that our next speaker is in a snowstorm watching from his laptop. So what commitment there to run a company and to be here to give his presentation from afar. Teddy Russell is the CEO and owner of Russell Landscape. He received a Bachelor of Business Administration in 1998 from the University of Georgia, Terry College of Business. Go Dogs! And thanks, Teddy, for being here today. He has been just recognized as one of the top growing companies in Atlanta. Top 40 under 40 as Alumni Association class recognized him. He's been in Georgia Trend magazine as one of Georgia's top movers and shakers. So we're very pleased to have him with us today and to share some of his experiences over the past year. And we thank you for your leadership and for your participation, Teddy.
Thank you, Gil. Thank you, Greg, and the University of Georgia for lining up this great discussion. As mentioned, I'm Teddy Russell, and we have a family business, Russell Landscape, located in Sugar Hill, Georgia. We have about 475 employees, and we're located in Nashville, Atlanta, Savannah, Charleston, Destin, and Tampa. So it's been a very interesting 12 months, to say the least, for all of us. And we're very fortunate in the green industry. We've even thrived during a pandemic, which says a lot about us and also the industry that we're in. All of us have learned to step up and be ready for challenges. And I was thinking about it this morning, just being stuck here in this blizzard, and I can't get out. Just 12 months ago, I probably would have had to reschedule or cancel. And yet here we are having a fairly seamless presentation. It really does show you how fast things happen and how far we come and how quickly we adapt. I was asked to talk about managing essential workforce in a pandemic and talk about the crew dynamics and challenges and opportunities and how we've adapted. I don't have slides because I am out of town. I'm just going to have a discussion today, and hopefully there will be some insight that everybody can relate to and maybe learn from. So I thought I'd start, though, with really the beginning of 2020. At Russell Landscape, like many companies doing their strategic planning, we have a annual managers meeting. This is usually about 80 members of our team for a 2-day retreat. And the 2020 theme, as we had a theme, was pivot like a cheetah. And I always love this story. The cheetah is the fastest land animal. I think it can go up to speeds of 70 miles per hour. And that's pretty impressive. However, what we spoke about during the managers meeting is the success of the cheetah is not necessarily because it's going 70 miles an hour. And like many companies, we're moving fast. We're always going as fast as we can, but we can learn from the cheetah. And the cheetah is actually successful for killing its prey, not only for its speed, but it can, for two other reasons. It's the only animal, I believe, that can extend its claws, and it can dig into the ground when it's hunting. And what I thought the main reason that the cheetah was successful is because when it's running 70 miles an hour, it has the ability to immediately slow down and pivot and turn. And that's pretty impressive. And we related to that to our business as we're running fast and trying to accomplish everything we can, but you have to be ready to slow down and pivot and turn. And that was the theme of our managers meeting in January. And so when we hit March, we just kind of met and decided to keep that theme going and saying, hey, look, we're running fast and we're hitting a challenge, and it's time to make sure we have the ability to pivot. So I thought that was pretty interesting and wanted to bring up that story. If you remember the first week of March, it was really probably the first time you heard in America the news about a possible virus. And believe it or not, I was on spring break with my family, taking them skiing. If you can tell, I do enjoy to ski. And my wife brought some masks with her. And I just thought it was the silliest thing. She put them in her purse, and we were out in Colorado at that time, and we never used the mask. But when we came home, that was, I think, Thursday, March 5th. And on Friday the 6th, he started hearing some pretty good discussion, and my executive team and I met. And we certainly didn't think that this was going to turn into a pandemic, but we did decide to prepare for the worst. And I look back about those things, and there's some critical moments in any type of challenges. You always want to expect the best. As business owners, we're optimistic and always hope for the best, but you do have to prepare for the worst. And on that Friday, we met. We discussed what the worst possible scenarios would be, and quite frankly, we were probably wrong about 95%. But I did make the decision on Monday, which would have been the 9th, I guess that was the 8th or so, to fly out and visit our Savannah, Charleston, and Nashville branches. So just to make sure we were in front of the team, and felt like that was important. When I got to Nashville on that Tuesday, my COO actually met me. He drove to Nashville, and I rode home with him. So you can see how fast things escalated and how fast things were moving. We drove home, obviously having good discussion. And on the 11th, which was that Wednesday, we decided to send out emails about winter illnesses. You get into business these days, and you're always scared about everything litigious and so forth. And we wanted to be real careful how we presented it, but basically how to stay safe with winter illnesses and so forth. So that was just Wednesday. And as the week progressed, we decided to have a test run on that Friday the 13th, which I think is pretty funny that Friday the 13th is really when the pandemic started for us. But we had a test run for all of our office to work from home. And it was, at the time, it was okay, we're just going to do this, and we're still in a nothing's going to happen mode. But we learned all kinds of things during that. And I remember thinking, man, everybody left the office. I actually went to the office that day, and my IT guy was there. But we learned that people needed cords and monitors, and some people didn't have good Wi-Fi cables, all kinds of things that you learn. Some people had to come back to the office because it wasn't working. And I just think about that, going through a pandemic, planning and learning ahead of the time. And it's just, I look at today and the differences those decisions made, and how we have people working remotely today. And again, I'm speaking to you today from a remote location in Utah, and it's all pretty seamless. We have learned a lot, and we've come a long way. I will say too that in the beginning, that I always think of March as really when everything happened, but we created right around the 20th or so, we started creating what we called Operation COVID. And we also created we called it Operation COVID. And then we had a coronavirus creed that was sent out. And I think those two documents were extremely important for us. And I shared them with Mary Kay as we were going through all that. I just felt it was important to share everything we had with the industry. The creed, and I wish I could share my screen here, but I'm on an iPad here, but I'll try to read it. It said, it's a little hokey, and sometimes you have to be a little hokey, but it said, "We are strong and we are united, and the power of purple," our company colors are purple, we will prevail against the spread of the coronavirus. I am committed to my health, the health of my family, the health of my teammates. I pledge that I will practice social distances inside and outside of work for the sake of my health and the health of my family and the health of my coworkers. I will never endanger myself or others by reporting to work if I feel unwell, have a fever, cough, digestive issues, or any other trouble breathing. I believe that Russell Landscape is my family, and I will protect it like my family, and I apologize, my eyesight's pretty small. And like I said, it can be a little hokey, but at the same time, that was an important document for us, for employees to know that, number one, we were going to pay them if they were sick. And number two is that they were going to be safe while they were working. So March was scary, and really we had to take some immediate actions, which I think were important. During times like that, you can't sit on your hands, you got to go. And one of the biggest things I heard Steve talking about was communicate. And communication was everything, internally, externally, and everything. And Richard Branson says that if you take care of your employees first, they will take care of your clients. So we really took that mentality. We had all of our managers, they were required, executive team was out in the yard those first few weeks, and just making sure that the employees felt safe, confident, and that they had the information they needed to get their job done. One of the things we did was we started a daily video. So every morning I would have a video done of myself, and it would just be probably anywhere from 4 to 6 minutes. And it would be a communication out to our employees. I think that was important because there was so much information coming out on the TV and it was freaking people out. We really wanted to make sure we got our message out to our employees, and it helped. I believe it helped to motivate performance and also reduce fears and just all kinds of fears of the unknown. So we did that, and I think it was important. We did that for about a month. Every day I had to shoot a new message out. And then after about a month, we started doing that every Monday. That was a pretty neat thing we did. And during that time, I remember every day I was communicating about essential service workers, which honestly, I had to quickly learn about. I don't think I had ever even thought anything about essential workers really before this, but I was talking to Mary Kay every day, and we were talking to national and state and local officials and just making sure that we were deemed as essential service workers. And gosh, I can't think of a factor that was more important than the Landscape Association being essential services, because we were able to get outside and get our job done. So anyway, communicate, just clear instructions for all employees. Our Operation COVID, which had all the items that I'd be more than glad to share with anybody, but staggered start times and appropriate distancing and mask in the truck and all those things. And we kept that was an evolving document that changed as we learned new information, and we would continue to send that out. And we had it posted for employees and everything else. So important things that we did that I believe really helped us through that time. And also, I believe it was important that we paid our employees so that if they did have a cold or anything that looked like coronavirus, they didn't feel like they had to come in. We did pay them. And as you guys remember, there wasn't a lot of people contracting the virus really for a long time. But I believe all the work we did helped us as we got into Thanksgiving of 2020 and after Thanksgiving, when we really started, seeing the viruses more prevalent. Anyway, communicate, and then action. We did all the things that everybody did with hand sanitizers for the trucks and cleaning supplies and mask and gaiters, and we tried to be fun with it and put our logo on it and everything else. But you got to have action, making sure the employees have that Operation COVID and then holding them accountable. It's very important that you're firm on your policies. You can't be lackadaisical about it. You can't have a document that's there that's fake. I see that a lot. If you're going to have a fake document that nobody's going to follow, you might as well not have it at all. We had to get all of our employees an essential service letter, not only just for the trucks that they were driving in, but also their personal vehicles so they could get to and from work. And we spent a lot of money, like everybody did, on all those things that would cost FedEx. Our FedEx cost increased as we were shipping supplies out to different branches. We had a lot of expenses increase in legal as we were consulting with our attorneys, and our HR had questions, and we had HR attorneys, and all those things that are tough decisions really paid off. I wanted to mention a couple other things that kind of came out of this. Our designers really stepped up big time. I believe it was sometime early summer, and one of our employees came back to us, and this is important, just getting feedback from your employees, but they said they saw a CEO walking in the heat of the summer on the asphalt in an office park, and he was just pacing back and forth on his phone. And he was probably the only person at that office park. Typically have 1,000 people there, and they probably had 30 people, and just blazing hot. And so our guy came back and said, we should design an outdoor trail for that office park. And so we did, and our designers stepped up then, and we created a whole document and a program for outdoor gathering spaces. And we sent it to our employees, and pergolas and Wi-Fi and outdoor working office parks that had cafeterias. We were helping them with spaces where they can eat outside. And I can tell you that's an opportunity that's going to continue in our industry for many years as these office parks and commercial buildings are trying to allow or have a spot for their tenants to be able to go outside and work and eat and feel comfortable. So those are some of the things we did. I'm going to try to get us caught back up here on time. Before COVID, I know that we were out of office space, and today we have several employees that work remotely. After this experience, we've decided to really have employees in certain areas like payroll or some accounting functions, estimating functions where they can work remotely. And that's a big shift and change for our business and I think our industry. We decided not to receive mail anymore at our office. And that's obviously we're receiving some mail, but primarily checks. They now go to a PO box where our bank receives the checks, opens the checks, and automates those right into our ERP system, which has created some great efficiencies. We fuel up our trucks at night now, and we try not to get our employees inside the gas stations, which is great efficiencies. And really, other than that, we've just taken the last year as an opportunity to promote our employees who have stepped up. And during challenging times, you really have to look around because strong leaders will step up and stand out. And this business isn't for everybody. The challenges we faced weren't for everyone, and not everyone made it. But we do believe it was an opportunity for the best employees to step up, and we recognize that. There was a lot of disruption. It was hard. We feel like we were moving fast, but like that cheetah, we felt like we were able to pivot and we're stronger today. It's important to have a good foundation at your company, systems and processes in place so that you can move fast, but you got to be ready to pivot and you got to be able to handle those challenges as they come. So you got to get ready in the good times. The only other thing I just want to say is it's important to have strong relationships ahead of time. Having those relationships with Mary Kay and the Urban Ag Council and friends of other owners of landscape companies was critical. We were talking, all the time. And it's nice to have somebody to lean on when you don't know the answer. And they were there for us and we shared information. And I just think that was a really important thing for me. And you always hear that when you need a friend, it's too late to make a friend. So just make sure you have those in place. And that was important to me. So hopefully that helps. So from Utah here, I'm going to turn it back over to Greg and really appreciate the opportunity to tell our story.
Thank you, Teddy. I really appreciate you sharing that, and so many takeaways from your conversation there with pivot like a cheetah. I like it, and it sounds like you all did just a fantastic job of making the tough decisions early on that really made a difference in how things went and lessons learned and efficiencies. Just really appreciate you sharing all of that with us. Do we have any questions? I'm looking at the chat box here. Any questions from the participants there or the attendees for Teddy? Okay, we have a question here. How are you doing property measurements prior to COVID-19? Did it change post-pandemic?
I believe property measurement being the estimating. If they're talking about estimating for properties, then we are still doing it the same way. We have 3 estimators that go out and actually physically measure properties and turn them into our estimating template, which gives it our pricing that we charge our customers. In regards to measuring our performance, which you could be asking, is we use a product called Site Audit, and all of our account managers, even before the pandemic and after, are responsible for measuring the performance of our crews and giving that to their bosses and also to the customers. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, and I think you actually answered the next one too, which was what technologies are you using? And you mentioned site audit software, and that's something we can bring up too in our panel discussion. So, well, Teddy, I thank you so much. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A, but I just want to personally thank you for sharing your time and to do this remotely. We'll see, what time in the morning is it where you're at? It's got to be early. So,
like most of us, we get up early.
I appreciate you being up early this morning. I know you're looking forward to getting back home, and I wish you safe travels. If you're able to stick around and participate in the panel discussion, you're welcome to. But if you need to run, we totally understand. We just appreciate you being here today.
Thanks, Greg. And unfortunately, I got a run. I've got a meeting on the mountain here, but I'm always available. Anybody ever has anything, please feel free to reach out to me.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to shift to our panel discussion now, and I'm going to introduce each of the members here. We have Carrie Shea, the owner of Victory Gardens in Savannah. We have Steve Faber, who is the operations manager for Rupert Landscape. We have Stan Deal, who's the vice president of Talapolina from Donaldsonville, Georgia. We have Pam Dooley, who's owner of Plants Creative Landscapes. And we have Mary Kay Woodworth, the executive director for the Georgia Urban Ag Council. And we have TJ Imberger, who is the Director of Parks, Public Grounds, and Public Works for Spalding County. Now, I mentioned Steve Card earlier, and I put him on the spot. He originally was going to be coordinating his maintenance management school events. He was not officially on the discussion panel, but Steve, if you're available and you'd like to join in as a member of our discussion panel, I'd love for you to participate. So we were fully expecting you to be running an event today. So we're going to informally just invite you to join in today if you're available. If not, TJ is also on the Georgia Recreation Parks Association board and would be happy to represent your organization that way. He sent me an email a moment ago. I want to thank all of you for being here and participating in this. Now that you've heard these presentations, I'm sure you've got some things in your mind that you're thinking about. I'm going to turn it over to Jill Gamble now, who will maybe present some questions for you. Jill, does that sound?
That sounds great.
Good way to start. And I think we're going to start with Mary Kay. Is that right?
Yes, we would love to start with Mary Kay. We've heard from all the different speakers today that the Georgia Urban Ad Council just played a pivotal role over this last year. And so we would love to hear from you on how the things progressed and what you all did to try to help the green industry during this pandemic.
Sure. Thanks, Jill. And thanks to all the other speakers so far. Great information. Steve Newton, we worked very closely together, Teddy and I, and Pam, so many people that are here involved. I was reviewing the timeline the other day of when this started, when we started hearing about it, and how fast things progressed. And just a personal note, my husband and I were supposed to go to Italy, to Rome, on March 28th of 2020. And I have a cousin who lives in Milan. And on January 6th, in February, she'd been Facebook messaging us about what was going on in Italy. And I was starting to become alarmed. And I think March 6th or 7th, we canceled our trip. And her response to me was, "How can you do this? We need your money." What could be worse than 2 weeks being stuck in Italy quarantined? And looking back on that, oh, good grief. Who would have ever thought we're closing on a year now? But it did move fast. And our mission at the Georgia Urban Ad Council as a professional trade association is to advocate, educate, and promote Georgia's green industry. And that's exactly what we did with this. Relationships are the key to getting things done. And as Teddy said, you don't make a friend when you're, I don't know the words, in a crisis. You've got to have relationships that you've built on in good times and in bad. And I'm part of a National Association of Landscape and Nursery Executives. And in early March, we started really talking on a daily basis about what was happening in their states, particularly starting in Oregon, California, and things like that, and share some great information. And then we've started seeing the shutdowns. In the city of Athens was the first city to have a stay-at-home order, then city of Atlanta, then city of Decatur. And while this was all going on, I was communicating with all of the jurisdictions, and I think there's 600 in Georgia, to show them, yes, we have been declared an essential business and such. What really was bad was on March 25th, the city of Atlanta said landscape was not an essential business. Within 24 hours, we had that reversed because we knew the people to get to talk to. Tremendous lift with the Georgia Department of Ag and Commissioner Gary Black to be able to have that, because we knew that if that stayed in place, that was the precedent for all these other communities to do the same thing. City of Decatur, about the same time, deemed landscape an unessential business. And Pam Dooley, I'm sure, is shaking her head right now because we spent an awful lot of time trying to get a hold of folks there to get that changed. And they finally, about a week later, backed down a little bit, but it was very difficult. Simultaneously, we were trying to get communication out to our members and non-members, anyone in the industry, to get them a non-essential or an essential business letter that we created, to get them protocols that we put together. And Teddy and I and other landscape businesses, we collaborated on a lot of that. They gave me information that they had started to put together so we could communicate this. And on April 3rd, the governor issued the statewide shelter-in-place order, which superseded all of the local ordinances. Not that we ever want that to happen, the last thing we wanted, but to have that stability that these local ordinances, local governments could not put in more strict forces in place was critical to our business. So that was how it all started. And I guess we'll just go let other people talk. In the meantime, once we got everything stabilized as best we could, that's when we started providing resources to our business owners so that they didn't have to go and look to find out about PPP, to talk to CPAs, lawyers, things like that. But that's what we do and we continue to do.
Thank you so much, Mary Kay. And we have a comment in the chat. Thank God for Urban Ag and their efforts. Saved many of us around the state. So thank you so much for your work.
Welcome.
I wondered, I know that you all have pivoted, adapted so much this year, and this is to all of our panelists. Are there any particular practices that you intend to keep in the coming year that have really just changed the way you do business based on your experiences?
Yeah, I'll join in on that, Jill, if that's okay. Yeah, I'll tell you the biggest thing was we were just getting ready to do a renovation at one of our offices and build about $130,000 addition on to make more office space and meeting space. And of course, once this happened and we started working from home more, that whole thing was like, man, we don't even need to do this. And I don't think those practices will change. I think a lot of the positions like Teddy was talking about, estimators, they've been working from home for almost a year now, and we've been very successful in growing the business and being able to get estimates out and bidding and being able to meet on teams to discuss the numbers and where they need to be. Same thing for a lot of admin positions. And even in operations, minimizing the number of people there in the mornings to get crews out and in the afternoons to meet crews as they come in. So before it was like all hands on deck. And then it became a rotating schedule that I think allowed people to be a little more at home and with families. And I think that's probably not going to change much. And I think it's a good thing. So a little better quality of life type of thing.
I've got one here in Spalding County. Biggest thing we've seen, of course, we're accustomed to handling emergencies. So we handle this just like any type of national disaster or anything like that. But one thing that we did start doing was a community partner meeting. We did that about every 3 days where we had all of our government agencies, all of our churches, our nonprofits. We started meeting by Zoom, about 85 folks. And we have continued that process every 2 weeks. We do that every Thursday for about 30 minutes. So that has been an excellent way to continue communication. And of course, being prepared if anything else happens. So that's been a positive step in our community.
I think for us, we had been thinking about, we were running 2 different operations within 4 miles of each other. And one of, I think, the biggest impacts of COVID is just as an accelerant. It really pushed us along to just go from, should we do this, to absolutely, we need to do this. So we sold one of our locations, consolidated into another location. Steve, I think that goes in line with identifying what you need to do work and how that is forever different for all of us. And we also took the opportunity, a lot of people during COVID, and I see this as an ongoing trend, are able to work remotely. So they're spending more time out of town where they want to be. So we have actually started expanding into destination markets to where we think there's tremendous opportunity to expand our landscape business.
Speak from the perspective of a smaller company. We don't have much office staff. I have a co-owner who shares a lot of the management responsibilities of our company with me. And we basically have one full-time office person. And she's been mostly working at home, which has probably been a welcome change for her. She lives about an hour away from our office. So there's a lot less travel time for her. I don't know if that will be a permanent situation for us. I think there's some benefits to it and there's some challenges it's created just in terms of managing such a small business and needing to be in pretty constant contact. I think there are some benefits to seeing people face to face that I hopefully will get to enjoy at some point in the future. There are some processes in our business that I think we've by necessity had to streamline, which has been I think that's been a benefit to our business. I think in terms of getting the crews ready for jobs in the morning and thinking about who needs to go and where, we've streamlined our operations and really had to think about who really needs to be involved in those processes and how can we limit the amount of time when people need to be in the shop together getting supplies ready for jobs and that sort of thing. And then I think from the sales perspective, I think it's caused us to rethink our sales process, and we're still working on that, but I think we're refining that and getting a better system in place for that. One of the things that we've done a lot of is work closely with a landscape designer who we subcontract to help us land new jobs and visualize new jobs. And he has the ability to do screen sharing with Zoom, so we can do a lot of our meetings with customers on Zoom, and he can actually edit the drawings and edit the plans right there while we're in a Zoom meeting with customers, which is just a huge efficiency compared to having multiple meetings on site and going through things multiple times. It's really allowed us to tighten up some of those processes. So I think that will stick. I think that's something we'll definitely keep doing going forward.
So that leads right into my next question. I've heard that you all mentioned Zoom and Teams. What other technologies have you all taken up, marketing strategies that you anticipate, or even if it's not, just something that might be helpful to others here, things that products and technologies that you are using now as a result of the pandemic? No changes?
I don't know that it's a change for us. We had actually started rolling it out in February of last year, but we changed our business operating system to Aspire. And it has been a tremendous learning curve for us, but also we're just so grateful for the timing of having that robust platform to connect our operations, our sales teams. So that, I would say, for last year really was a significant change for us, and also a tremendous benefit to keep everybody connected.
We actually went ahead and built a training room specifically designed for Zoom. So we did sound-based and 86-inch screen TV and did everything wireless as far as controls and that kind of thing. And that's really helped us to try to keep up, be a participant of our meetings. And then it's actually the benefit of we now have a really neat little training center that we could use in future as well for other things in reference to technology.
Pam, I know that you're very involved with or into new technology things with your auto mowers you use on residential properties and the irrigation automation. Are y'all finding that customers are wanting more of that? They don't want people on their property. They want as much automated as they can get.
I'd say it's a mix. We have seen, because we are residential, we've seen one side of the spectrum just really crave appointments with our team. Like, it's crazy. Like, appointments take longer for account managers, for our sales team, that conversation. But on the other hand, yes, we've had a significant number of people who, once they understand the value provided by this technology, they are fully on board, they get it, and they do appreciate less people on site every week. Yeah, it's been an interesting year, and we're excited to see if there's any shifts in that this year with our customers.
We're coming up exactly on an hour and 30 minutes. That went by very fast. I want to thank you all so much for your time. And we will have our third webinar in this series on March 18th. I believe it's at the same time. Is that right, Greg? 8 to 9:30. We'll be sending out flyers. Please join us. And I want to thank all of our panelists so much for your time, for getting up early this morning. And we will be sharing this webinar on YouTube so that you can share with others who could benefit from the information today. So thank you all so much. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone, and have a good week.